Remember, kids, don't hold firecrackers in your hands. Let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Ray's Rewind with Bushman and Drew.
Jansen. That is into center field. Here comes Kiermaier. Phillips has tied the game. Arose Arena coming around. Throw home. Now he stumbles. But the ball gets away. Tampa Bay wins it. Brett Phillips, game 4 hero.
The sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And whoa, my camera's all weird. Welcome in, everybody. It's another episode of the Rays Rewind podcast, the sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast on the Sick Media Network. I'm one of your hosts, Bushman, and of course, joining me as usual is Drew. Welcome in, everybody. It is 4th of July Eve, and what better way to celebrate that than a trade? We've got a trade, everybody. Dun, da, da, da. The Rays made a trade this morning, sending Aaron Civale to the Brewers for double A prospect.
Oh,
great. What?
high A.
I'm sorry. High
Yeah,
A prospect.
we're looking 2 or 3 years down the road here. Evan?
High A prospect infielder Gregory Barrios. So this came down early time of this recording. This came out. The trade happened, I think, mid-morning.
Mhm.
Not shocked by this, Drew, because we did talk about possibly them moving Aaron Civale to trading him because it was just it's time.
Yep.
It's time to move on. We talked about this, and I think this is a good move because this brings up Shane Baz, who traveled over to the team in Kansas City last night, even though it was raining, so they make a spot for him in the rotation, which we were all kind of waiting on, and this is the move that makes it happen. And then I'm happy for it. I think this is I think this is a good move for both parties, especially for Civale, because I think ever since he came over, it wasn't really a good fit, to say the least. So this kind of gives him a breath of fresh air and some new scenery is going to Milwaukee in that trade. So I like it. Thoughts on this?
Yeah. I like you said, we talked about this a bunch, and there's been reports I think in between our last recording and today, industry reports saying that the Rays could try to move guys like Civale, like a Zach Littell, because because of a surplus of pitching, essentially, which is weird to think, given the injuries the Rays sustained last year, that we could have the Rays being considered to have a surplus of pitching right now. So, I mean, Civale, yeah, he's been really up and down, mostly down since the trade, which last year, which is, I don't think anyone, when the Rays actually give up something for a pitcher value, like, prospect like Manzardo, I'm sure no one really expected Civale to struggle like he did. I'm sure everyone, including myself, thought it would be a better fit, better results. But like you said, he's just not showing enough to stick in the rotation. I mean, I know that he was slotted going into the season. By virtue of, I think, an injury or two. I mean, he was our number 2 going into the season. I think he was behind Eflin in terms of being lined up. And I mean, I would say right now he's probably at the highest he would be as a 4, maybe a 5 in our rotation, depending on how, of course, with Zach Littell and how he pitched last night. Definitely looking a lot better than Civale, but so you could argue Civale has been the worst, certainly the worst pitcher in the rotation. And we at the beginning of the season, he was one of the guys we were looking at as, hey, he didn't really show us a whole lot last year. If he can take a huge step forward, that would mean a lot to this rotation, and it just hasn't happened. So I think it's getting something of value for him because he's making just under $5 million this year, arbitration again next year. You'd wonder the Rays would even want to pay him any more than what they're already paying him, based on what the results they've gotten. So I'm all for it. He leads. I think he's tied for the NL in homers given up now, with 16 going into the National League. So, and the Rays pitching, I mean, just giving up. I think I could hit a home run off of this year. So it's getting rid of him. bringing up Shane Baz, you know, I want to make the point that as Rays fans, if you see anyone out there saying that this is the Rays selling and starting to sell, and this means they're selling, do not believe that. It's not the Rays selling. This is because they don't think they can compete. I do think we've said they're going to do kind of a buy sell thing probably, unless they, just tank here in the next few weeks. But with the way they're trending, I think you're still going to see maybe a guy like Zach Littell go, potentially maybe capitalizing on his value, which I would say is probably at its peak.
Especially after last night.
And treating a guy like Civale is not the Rays waving the white flag. Shane Baz is a better pitcher. I mean, I know that he hasn't had the longevity of Civale. He's still got a lot to prove, but the ceiling is much higher. I'm sure the Rays would much rather give those innings to Shane Baz over the last half of the season. And so, I mean, you have arguably a better pitcher coming up with Shane Baz than, what you had going out in Civale. So to get something of value for Civale at this point, I have no problems with, especially, dealing him in the National League. You're not going to see him again.
I agree with you 100% across the board about what you just said, because, this is a sell move, but it's also a salary dump move, but it clears up a spot for a guy we've been waiting to see because of injury, and now he's ready to go. And now you can plug him instantly into that rotation.
Right.
So it's like a win-win on both sides. And yeah, I agree with you. This is no way saying the Rays are being I mean, it's a sell move, but it's no way saying, hey, we're waving the white flag, because the way they're playing better. We're over 500 now. So it's like we're in the thick of it because we're 3 games out of that wild card spot now.
Yeah.
So,
and they're playing great. I mean,
yeah, they're playing great ball, which is I think if we talk bad about them more and more, maybe they'll play better. So I think that's worked out for not only our show, but them too as well.
Yeah.
Civale kind of turns into that. He gets in that really rare category of a missed trade. Coming from Cleveland from last year, he's kind of been a disappointment. Massed a 5.17 ERA, and he's really struggled obviously with the home runs. He's given about 1.6 home runs for every 9 innings pitched. So he's just, like I said before, I think he's one of those guys that to me really never meshed well in that rotation.
Yeah,
and even though that we saw some times where he could have been that pitcher that we thought, because I really thought he was going to come into this season and, be that first half guy he was with Cleveland instead of the second half guy he was with the Rays, and maybe turning around with more teachings from Kyle Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
But it just never gelled for him, and it just never really panned out. So it's on both sides. I think if I could grade this, I would say an A on both sides.
Yeah.
Although we're not going to see Barrios for a very
I'll be in my mid 30s.
I'll probably be like retired by then, by the time.
It's so interesting. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm sure I'm forgetting a trade, but it feels like when they traded for Civale, that was the first time to give up a prospect like Manzardo, who was, top 3 or 4 in the system, arguably MLB ready even last year at some point. The Rays typically it's when they're giving up their pitching prospects to bring guys in to the lineup. You think back to Nelson Cruz, giving up guys like Joe Ryan. You're trading away moves like today where they're trading out of a surplus in 21. They traded Rich Hill, trading Chris Archer, which I know that was a different time, but like rarely, I don't feel like, just trying to think back, I don't remember a time where the Rays said, okay, we're going to give up high prospect capital at the time, what was considered high prospect capital, to bring in a guy that's going to be in the middle to, top half of the rotation from the jump. Mm-hmm. So when the Rays do something like that, and knowing how they do so well with pitching with Kyle Snyder, you feel like it's a slam dunk no matter what. And so for it not to work out is a little strange. I mean, I remember him coming in, his curveball was one of the best curveballs in the game, up there with Tyler Glasnow. And, so that was exciting. And it felt like it should work because the Rays are so good at developing pitching, and for them to be, hey, we like this guy enough to give up a prospect like Manzardo. You just assume it's going to work out. And it never, like, he can never string enough starts together where it felt like he was really settling in. I mean, this year he got off to a good start early on, but then it felt like he was just trying to scratch and claw you were just happy if he got through 5 innings of giving up 1 run, and that's just not good enough.
It
I
also,
don't
you know
care.
what, you know what, Drew? It also signals to me too that I wouldn't say like guys that aren't performing well are on a short leash, but it also shows to me that the organization is like, hey, you know what? We're kind of done. We're kind of done with these types of performances because we saw it a couple weeks ago with Davinsky.
Yep.
He's done now, and then Civale, who's been a disappointment. So it just kind of shows me now the front office is like, okay, we gotta let go who's not performing well,
Trim
who's
the
not.
fat.
Yeah, we got to trim the fat that's not performing well in this team that's hindering us from making another playoff run. So I'm glad that they're finally realizing that now and starting to
Yep.
make those moves to where, hey, we're going to bring in the guys that we hope are going to make an immediate impact. Like Shane Baz is hopefully going to be one of those guys to where,
Mhm.
we're going to now start to get on that run that hopefully we can get on to get back really in the thick of it. Obviously they still kind of are, but we can get over that hump and really
Mhm.
get into that thick of the playoff run. So I'm glad that they're starting to realize that and starting to make those types of moves.
Mhm.
So that kind of really shows to me that once we get closer to the trade deadline, maybe we'll see something big happen.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see a couple of big moves that will show the rest of the league, okay, the Rays are kind of back now. We should
Mhm.
look out. Hopefully so. Hopefully so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely encouraging to see. I mean, you saw quotes, I think, early at the beginning of the summer. They were seemed dead set on the 26 guys they had on the roster. They were gonna
Mhm.
stick with them. They felt like that was the best 26 guys, and it was frustrating because you just felt like there were some pieces there that are just not they're dead weight. They're weighing the team down.
Yep.
And so for them to move on, Harold Ramirez, again, none of these guys were necessarily a reason. They were not the cause of the Rays' struggles,
Right.
but it almost felt like they were just showing up enough in a negative way that as the Rays were kind of getting going, then it's like 2 steps back.
Right.
Harold Ramirez, not so much. I mean, obviously he just didn't hit the ball hard enough. He wasn't providing enough with the bat. I mean, I know he had, he had a decent average and he hustled and great clubhouse guy, but for what his role was, he was just not hitting the ball hard enough for power like they needed him to, extra base hits, that kind of thing. So, he's a casualty of that. But again, Davinsky, he was struggling so much. Civale, we've seen it for a long time. So I agree. For them to move on and say, "Hey, we're gonna make some changes," is really encouraging because the reality is, at least for me, I don't know if everyone else feels this way, but if Shane Baz goes out there, we're talking at the end of July, but the deadline, he's been up and down, maybe a good start here, bad start there. I think we would all rather just see that from him and be willing to give him that leash of those innings and those reps, and let him figure it out, kind of like Bradley has done, and to see what he can be, because Shane Baz is a high ceiling pitching prospect. I mean, I know he had the Tommy John, but he was a big time prospect coming in. Um, so I would much rather see those innings go to someone like Shane Baz and hope that he hits the ground running. And now, you're adding Springs, Rasmussen later in the season. Like
Yep.
now you're cooking with gas. And so Civale, you just kind of didn't feel like there was as much. I mean, just kind of getting what you're getting with him. So
And to me also, he
it's
didn't
more
really
exciting.
he to me he didn't really fit the profile that the guys that are in the rotation now, because look at Taj now with Boz, these are like hard throwing guys.
Yeah.
Savali wasn't really a hard thrower.
Yeah.
So we're getting more power pitching back.
And
Is it
Eflin and Littell are just such good control guys
right?
that they
And now
can offset that. And Civale is supposed to be, but his walks were, I feel
But
like
now
he
you're
had more
getting
games
now
than
you're
not.
getting Boz, who's more of a power pitcher, and
Right.
that's another thing that I like too is now you're
Yep.
getting more power pitching back into the rotation where you had Taj who would do I can't express my happiness the way he's
Yeah.
been pitching,
Yeah,
man.
he's
It's
been great.
just been awesome, and I'm glad
Yeah.
that he's finally like it's finally clicking for him. You know
Yep.
what I mean? It's just
Yep.
like man, when he gets rolling, he's just unhittable.
Yep.
And that's what I love seeing about him now where when that trade happened, it's like, okay, he's coming over and he was down in the minors for the longest time. When we brought him up, he wasn't doing that well. And now it's Taj Bradley now. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm glad to see. And And I'm glad that you brought up Springs and Rasmussen. Is like he's only a couple of weeks away, I think. And then
All-Star break.
Yeah,
but they said this month for sure.
And then Rasmussen will be back. He starts his rehab start, I think, after the All-Star break. So he'll eventually be back.
Yeah.
So, but the thing that I hope that really happens is the bullpen is going to have to step it up a little bit because Boz is going to be on a pitch count because they're not going to have him go.
Yeah,
they're not going to have him go long. So the bullpen is going to have to really step up in those long innings once Boz has hit his pitch count because once he's there, it's like, okay, guys, you got to step it up, especially if they have a lead going into like the later innings, and that's hopefully the bullpen can figure it out.
I think to me this trade hypothetically seems very similar to something that I think we could see towards closer to the deadline, which is someone like Ahmed Rosario going out. The Rays saying, okay, hey, he's obviously a 1-year rental. Other teams could use a guy like him. We could get something back for him to clear a pathway for Junior Caminero or something like that. Not saying, obviously Shane Baz, Junior Caminero, you want to talk about prospect profiles, a little different right now, but that would be something similar that what's happening right now is like, all right, yeah, Civale was okay. He was whatever, honestly, not that great. Rosario has been much more valuable, but okay, we're trading him. We're clearing a spot for Shane Baz now. I could see something similar like that on the lineup side. So it's just, it's exciting to see. And I'm looking forward to watching Shane pitch this weekend. So, yeah. And then the return they got, Barrios, I mean, he's fine. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know anything about him other than what I've read this morning, but it seems like he's, really good with his glove. He's going to high A in Bowling Green. And I know they have a lot of shortstop middle infield prospects. It seems like we just keep getting shortstop prospects, but
that's what I was saying too. I'm like, yay, another shortstop.
He's hitting really well in high A this year. He's the 19th prospect in our system now. He's hitting 317 WRC plus of 121 in high A. He's only 20 years old. So he's around, Xavier Isaac's age, Carson Williams' age. And so he's, only one homer, but he's got, 20 extra base hits, 16 steals, and a super small strikeout rate, 9.5%. So, I mean, it seems like a good contact guy. He's not gonna hurt you too much with the strikeouts. So I'm always for that. And I feel like hitting, he could always flourish into more of a hitter. I feel like it's harder for guys to do that with the glove, right? Like we rarely see a guy with a poor glove coming up through a system that just turns into a plus defender.
Right.
So for him to already be a plus defender, it's one of those things that, hey, if he can really keep this up behind the plate at such a young age, like there's no reason why he can't have, not saying he would be Carson Williams level at, top 20 or whatever in the league, but like there's no reason why a plus defender in the middle of the infield that starts ascending as a hitter can't become a known prospect. And
plus you can always dangle him down the road as a trade piece,
right?
Too, because they're so packed with shortstops right now. It's going to be such a long time for him to get in the show because of who's waiting in the wings. So, but yeah, I mean, I think overall, when I saw the news this morning, I wasn't shocked at it. I was like, okay, that's a good move. Like I think it's been a long time coming. And once the tweet went out, it was official. It's like, okay, now I think the Rays are ready to move forward and just kind of see what they're doing right now, just to hopefully make that playoff run. And right now they're playing good ball. And what I think also too is we're now seeing a lot of these hot teams in the first half start to stumble and be injured. Like the Yankees aren't doing so well. The Royals aren't doing so well either. And so we're seeing a lot of these, playoff contenders already that are starting to stumble in that second half, almost to the All-Star break. So I think the Rays are playing good ball at a right time to gain some ground and hopefully make that push.
Yep. So are we, we're coming back tomorrow, right? With a little more talk about the series and.
Yeah, this is kind of like a quick hit show for us just to discuss the Civale trade. So we'll be back. We'll be back recording another episode tomorrow. So 2
things I want to talk about tomorrow, just to tease a little bit. I need to make apologies to Jose Siri, and I'll do that. So tomorrow's show, I need 2 things. I got to make amends to Jose Siri, make apologies to Jose Siri because he's been playing so much better over the last month, and I've yet to acknowledge that on this show. And I was ready to get, throw in the hat or, wave the white flag on Jose.
Well,
Let's just
we
give Johnny Blue
both
so-
were.
Yeah,
We both were.
I know, but so we can get in that a little bit more tomorrow. But just want to acknowledge that I'm very, very pleasantly surprised with his play. And then one thing I feel like we're going to, your favorite topic, my favorite topic to talk about, Wander Franco. There's no updates ever about him, but July 5th is the deadline for the charges. So I feel like,
Oh, really? That's right.
there's going to be something in the next 48 hours about him. By tomorrow, maybe we'll know some more information, but that just something to keep an eye on. So
It's been so quiet on him, and then now, I mean,
yeah, I mean it's the deadline for the charges is tomorrow, or the Friday, the 5th. So I don't know what that means. I'm sure it won't be good, but we're hopefully closer to getting some sort of resolution. So some interesting
see.
topics going on, but yeah, and we can talk more about the Royal Series, and hopefully the Rays grab another win tonight. It makes it a little easier to talk about tomorrow.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for joining in. It was a quick hit with the Rays Rewind podcast, the sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast on the Sick Media Network. We'll see you guys again on the Rays Rewind podcast. Make sure to go to our YouTube page at the Sick Podcast, Rays Rewind. Hit that subscribe and notification bell. We'll see you guys later. Peace.
See you.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Rays Rewind with Bushman and Drew on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.